Alright YouTubers, so in this video we're going to talk about building a computer in 2019. So really, what are the options these days for the newer stuff? We're talking 8th gen and 9th gen. 9th gen is slowly getting to the point where there is a equivalent processor for just about everything the 8th gen had. So let's get started talking about cases. Alright, so a couple things to look at here. We've got a mid tower and a mini tower next to it. So the mid tower is pretty nice because it will hold a micro ATX motherboard or an ATX motherboard. And personally, in my opinion, if you're new to building a computer, I think you're better off getting a bigger case and going with the bigger motherboard, mainly because they're definitely easier to work on. If you got big hands, big fingers, big hands, you're definitely going to want the added size of the motherboard because things are spaced out a little better. Other than that, you've got a lot more bays that you can put your hard drives in. And you know, look for the features that are on them. Like the front of this one, you see USB 3.0, 2.0, power button there, reset. This one here, which is the mid tower, has one USB 3.0 on it, and only has a 2, which is kind of a bummer. It does have a hidden place for CD-ROM, which is pretty nice, and the power button is goes through there, so kind of an interesting design on that one. But yeah, cases, some of them will come with a fan, and you know, it's all about moving air, keep your computer cool. So another thing that's nice about the bigger ones, there's obviously more space in there, they're not as cramped. And definitely look for ones that come with the fans. It'll save you some headache later instead of having to look for them. But you also have possibilities of having, you know, more than one video card with the bigger setups. So let's go from there and talk about our motherboards. And I've got a couple here that are ready for 8th gen right out the box and not necessarily ready for 9th gen. So in a little bit we'll talk about the processors themselves, but all of these that are in front of us can go from 8th gen to 9th gen. So problem is, to get to 9th gen you first must possess a 8th gen chip to update the BIOS. And so we have done a few of those on here where you've seen me update this guy, and update that guy. That one has a i7-8700K attached to it, so there hasn't been a need to update that BIOS yet. But eventually we'll probably do that. So let's start in the front where we have probably the cheapest motherboard. These are all in computers, so we're unfortunately looking at boxes. This is the Gigabyte H310M A, and just in case you didn't catch it, this is just going to cover Intel, so it's not really going to be helpful if you're into AMD watching this. But so this type motherboard is real basic. Obviously, you got a place on here for your CPU. Only 2 slots for the RAM. One PCI Express 3.0 x 16 for a video card, and then a couple of the smaller PCIs there. This has a small amount of SATAs, 4 of those, which isn't that great. Does have a spot for a M2 for SSD, so we'll talk about SSDs. pretty much that's a standard thing on the motherboards these days. I won't really talk about the RGB function because that's just, you know, making things look pretty. So now this motherboard, $55, micro ATX, pretty cheap. Will support 9th gen if you do a BIOS update. Watch some of my videos on how to do that. You will need a 8th gen chip to accomplish that. And this is going to be good for your lower end chips. Your i3 8100, your i3 8400, your i7 8700. Basically, you don't want, if you have a K at the end of your processor, you do not want this motherboard, right? Now, after a BIOS update, you can get this to work with the i3 9100, the i5 9400, both the regular and the F version, as well as the i3 8100F. And it'll work with other processors. However, once again, why buy this board if you have something that you can overclock? So, moving on, another relatively cheap board, but this one is actually a ATX, and this is a mining board. So, if you're into mining, we don't really do that on this channel. I'm gonna find the opening for this thing. We don't really do mining here, even though I do have a mining board. And so I've got this packed up, but yeah, we're not going to look at that right now. So this board is special, I will say. Has the capability of supporting a bunch of different graphics cards for mining, and since that's really not my specialty, probably not too good idea to talk about it. This board also is pretty cheap. Got this on Amazon, and it does have a lot of the same features, supporting 8th gen Intel Pentium Celeron and Intel Core processors. This board can be updated to 9th gen, which I did. I have a video out on that. But other than that, you know, this was one of those buys that maybe I shouldn't have done. Now, let's talk the two boards that I really like here. So something I don't have is the Z390 motherboard. I've got two Z370s, and I actually have another Z370 on the way. But these motherboards are pretty awesome. All right, there's better ones out there. These don't have built-in Wi-Fi. If you need to have built-in Wi-Fi, make sure that you pick a motherboard that has that in there, or you're going to have to buy a little adapter that will plug into your motherboard or into the USB. But these motherboards, we'll grab this one. This is ATX, that one's an ATX. They have a lot of really good features on them. 4 RAM slots, the ability to do have the dual video card going. This supports the PCI Express x4 M2 and has 2 of them, which is nice. So if you're able to figure out how to boot your computer from those devices, it will make it super fast. And this allows overclocking, okay? So you can grab any one of the Intel 8th gen chips, or the ones that have the K values, and you will be overclock with this. The BIOS has really good stuff in there that shows you how to automatically adjust the speed, and so there's some good videos out there. I won't get too into that right here. Pretty simple to do if you have a K-type processor, okay? So other things, something like this is going to have more SATA, so you can have more drives. You're going to have a lot more connectors. This one has a Type-C, which is really nice if you have that need. Just things, you know, to look out for that you might want. Like I said, the 4 slots for RAM, the 6 SATAs, the 2 M2s, HDMI, And all of these take some form of DDR4 RAM. So that's another thing to keep an eye out for when we get to that point in the video. Alright, let's talk processors. So the one thing that you can't do with these boards, even though you'll see this is an i3-6100, you'll see that LGA 1151 socket. So this is not going to work with your 8th or 9th gen motherboards. So keep that in mind. Just be careful what chips you're buying. Alright, so what was one of the best 8th gen chips, the i7-8700K. It's still somewhere in the top 20 of the CPUs out there. You notice the K at the end, which allows for overclocking. That motherboard and that motherboard can handle it. Like I said, these other two, no. On the right, we have a 5th gen chip, the i5-9400F. I also have the i3-9100F. Probably about the time you watch this video, I will actually have gotten it and have a unboxing, interview, and a benchmark of it. But for now, it's in the mail. So you see the F. F means you need a graphics card. Okay. So do not buy this chip unless you're going to buy a graphics card. You will not get a picture. You'll have basically a blank screen if you have your HDMI plugged into the motherboard itself. You're not going to get anything. Okay. So you need a graphics card right off the bat. New builders, this is probably a mistake for you to get this because it's just another thing you got to troubleshoot. If you're not real sure, that could be a problem. Alright, so some of the other chips that are out there, the i3-8100, i5-8400, the i3-8350K. Alright, so notice the K again, overclockable. The i5-9600K, the i5-8600K, overclockable. There's some variants, i5-8400, i5-8500, and i5-8600, which you don't overclock. I believe there is an i5-9600KF, and there may be an i7-9700KF out there, which means you can overclock, but you need a graphics card. So all these things add up to some stuff you got to be careful of. Now, one of the main points to watch out for, though, is prices. You will find a lot of these new 9th gen chips are actually cheaper than 8th gen, okay? But there's the hassle of getting a 9th gen to work. There's the additional prices. The Z390 motherboards that will work, they are rather expensive, at least over $100. And I believe I got this for $90 new. That I probably paid over $100, $45 actually, $55 for that one. So that is something to definitely be careful of. So you can get a cheaper chip, but if you don't have an 8th gen chip to update your BIOS, you're going to have to get a Z390. Okay, so that adds to it. Now also, don't forget your thermal paste. Alright, you are going to need this doing your new build. A lot of times the processors come in and they actually they won't have it on them, but if you get one that has a CPU fan, like this came with a CPU fan, and not that we're really talking about this one, but you can hear the fan in there, such as this Intel fan right here. This will actually have the paste on it right here, so you won't need it. But if you have to take it out because you realized, oh, I got to update my BIOS with 8th gen, then you will be wiping that off and reapplying. So thoughts on if you really want 9th gen, like I said, get the Z390. If there's another board that you have, then you're going to have to get an 8th gen chip. Try eBay, buy an 8th gen Celeron.